Well, hey, everybody, and welcome back to Early Childhood Chats, the podcast. Andy Roszak with you as always. And today being joined by Ryan Miller. He's the Senior Director of Program for Youth Athletes and Elementary at Special Olympics in New York. What a cool title that is. He's also a certified athletic administrator, and he's been doing a ton of interesting work with Special Olympics and bringing it right to our early childhood program. So thought we'd have him on today, chat about what he's been up to. He's really showing a lot of really cool innovation and partnerships and just relevance on how programs are serving children with disabilities, serving young athletes, all the above. Ryan, thank you so much for being here. Tell folks about yourself. How did you get into this line of work? What have you been up to lately?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Andy. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to some of your audience. And so, yeah, I was a teacher, an educator, and an administrator for 13 years before coming over to Special Olympics. I've been here for roughly the same time, about 12 years now. And when I was teaching, I was a physical education teacher, athletic director, dean of students, ran the after school program. You wear 15 different hats when you're in education, it's just the way it is. And you're pulled from every angle. But I'm lucky enough to have transitioned into a job with an organization that continues to work in education in one way or another. And so my day to day, I get to sit down with athletic directors and educators and talk about some of the programs that we offer and what a partnership with Special Olympics New York would look like. So I'm really lucky in that regard. I am a father of three, a 20-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a soon-to-be 14-year-old. So I'm very busy with my home life. But again, my 9 to 5, which is definitely not 9 to 5, is spent working with our partners and trying to figure out ways that they can enhance the programming that they offer currently, or bring in new inclusive programming that will, again, not only enhance what they're offering, but also allow them to develop the gross motor skills of some of their students, their youngest students, so that those individuals could eventually transition into additional Special Olympics programming or community-based programming or programming within the school districts. A lot of options, but we need to ensure that individuals with intellectual disabilities and disabilities in general have the same opportunities that your mainstream students have. And so that's essentially what I do. I work statewide with our regional staff members. So that's phenomenal, not working just within the capital region in the Albany area, but being able to go from, New York City out to Buffalo. So the regional team, they're the ones who implement program. They may very well be the ones starting those conversations. My job is to educate those new partners, to provide professional development for them free of charge. Of course, everything we do is free of charge. Nobody pays for participation with Special Olympics, whether that be embedded within the school districts or, a 75-year-old floor hockey athlete, whatever it may be. Everybody gets to do what they do without ever having to write a check. So that's a nice aspect of it. So I'm not sure if I
Wow.
answered all your questions, but that's a quick overview of kind of how I spend my days and what I do. And of course, there's a million nuances in there, but for the most part, it's again working with those partners and getting them ready to take that next step so that they can offer new and improved programming within their schools.
Well, I mean, it's phenomenal. And I got to say, like, I'll be very naive here, Ryan. I had no idea. I was just thinking like Special Olympics, the Olympic Games and the competition. And that's kind of all I've been exposed to. Again, I was a little bit naive about what you did. So super excited to have the conversation and learn more about just everything you're doing. I mean, you've got an awesome curriculum. It covers really 8 big, broad areas, everything from foundational movement to walking to catching, throwing, striking, kicking, all the things. And it's really cool to see how engaged and really how beneficial this has been to our youngest learners out there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you hit on a pretty good point, which is, the misconceptions or misunderstandings that revolve around our organization. Special Olympics is actually the largest amateur athletic organization in the world. Special Olympics New York is a state chapter, so it's its own entity, and we're actually the largest state chapter in North America, or the largest chapter in North America. So undoubtedly, we have a really large responsibility to those individuals that we serve. But unfortunately, we the dollars that we take in, we put back out and reinvest into our athletes and into our programs. And all that to say that, we don't have a ton of money earmarked for the marketing of our organization. So to your point, I think people know, like they've heard of Special Olympics, but they couldn't necessarily articulate who we are or what we do, or they might not know that we're free of charge or that we're within the school districts, but also within the communities and within private homes as well. And so again, we do a lot of different things that just kind of fly under the radar. Our health programming is massive. We're the largest provider of health programming for individuals with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities. So it's things like that people don't become aware of until they become a partner with an organization or a school that is in partnership with Special Olympics, if that makes sense. So, that's why it's so important. So what I do is working with the youngest athletes. So really that 18 months or 2 years old up until 7, that's our young athletes program. And then junior athletes is sort of that upper elementary. So anywhere from, 7 or 8 up until 12, 13, 14. And I say it like that on purpose. We are more about gross motor skill development and the ability of individuals as opposed to their age or their grade level, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of assessments that go on to ensure that the correct programming is plugged in at the correct level and that students are receiving the individualized attention that they so deserve. So yeah. So anyway, in terms of the impact that we can have, it's very grassroots, it's very word of mouth. Like we hope that these partnerships with the schools, which are relatively new, unified programming or inclusive programming based within the schools has only been around for, I want to say 13 years now. And so we started with 12 school districts. And now we're well over 300 school districts in the state of
Wow.
New York. So yeah,
Okay.
it's
So,
grown
so you're not
exponentially.
busy at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and that again, that's just the school-based portion of what we do. And again, we have community-based programs. So that's really what I think a lot of people think of when they think of Special Olympics is, the softball tournament, at the community fields, or a basketball tournament at the YMCA, those sort of things. And that is part of what we do. And then you mentioned the games, which a partnership with ESPN means that finally the World Games are starting to get some coverage, which is absolutely amazing. Just for the sheer fact that now individuals understand what it is that we do and they start to appreciate the abilities of some of our athletes. But there's a whole structure in terms of competition, which we're not necessarily talking about today with our younger athletes. That is more again about the development of those skills so that they can eventually, maybe, perhaps, get to the competition stage. But in terms of our community-based program, they compete locally, they compete regionally or within super regional events, and then state games, which we have coming up in, I want to say 2 weeks. Though that's our biggest event as a state. But again, there's national games, and then there's world games as well. So you can imagine all the opportunities that exist for our athletes. And I'll paint a quick picture here. It's just to help with everyone's understanding. If you can imagine a 2-year-old within a pre-K program gets involved with a preschool that is partnered with Special Olympics New York, and they're offering young athletes. And so they're introducing the ideas of the basic movements and maybe even some of the rules that are involved with certain sports or games. But they're starting to understand teamwork and trust and communication, all of those things, following following direction, all the important stuff that we derive from sports. And they're doing this at a young age, so they're starting to understand it at a better level, right? And in terms of retention, that's something that student will take with them from grade level to grade level. And then eventually they go through young athletes at the local elementary school and junior athletes there, right? Which is embedded within the physical education program. They go into middle school, and because we had so much success at the elementary school, now they're participating in something called unified physical education, which in short, I would say is a variation of adapted physical education, but very different, and doesn't take the place of adapted physical education, but definitely serves a purpose. Lots of reflection and journaling and leadership opportunities for our athletes, inclusive, so bringing together students that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to get together. And then they graduate into high school, where now we have interscholastic unified sports. So there might be a unified champion school that has unified basketball, unified bocce, a lot unified bowling, to name a few. And so each of those sports, those operate just like any other sport. So whereas I played football in high school, these individuals would be playing basketball. And there's, not to get too into the weeds, but we do our best, and the schools do their best to really drum up interest in the team, but then also from the school community, ensuring that there's big crowds at those games, and they have signage, and they're talking about the game on the PA. They're doing a halftime, like the whole nine, right? Because again, we want these kids to have that full experience. So what I just outlined there, that's their school career, right? And they're possibly within that school system up until the age of 21, participating in those various activities, programs, and sports. And then eventually they graduate high school, and then they can transition into really one of two things. They could do unified programming at the collegiate level, so essentially unified intramural programming, or they could go into the community-based program. And that's kind of what we were talking about before, which, might be held at a YMCA or ARC or a local park, that sort of thing. But the point being that there's that full spectrum of activity, and these kids get in as early as possible, so that again, retention isn't an issue. We maybe start to help them build an appreciation for physical activity in general or a specific sport, and then those kids are asking the caregivers or mom, dad, whoever's at home, can I watch a game, or can I go out back and throw a ball? And so you've created an opportunity for this child to really appreciate sport in general, which personally I'm very passionate about. We as a family used sport as really a therapy for my middle child, who struggled with an eating disorder. The rest of my kids are very active in athletics, and for the reason that they're going to derive so many benefits out of participation. So these students with disabilities, they deserve those same opportunities. And we're trying to provide that for them, again, at an early age, but eventually, they're out in the community, and now they're participating in, like I said, regional competition or statewide competition. What a great experience that is, riding the bus with all of your teammates and others out to, wherever, Buffalo, and at Buffalo State, they're doing the competition. And you should see it, Andrew. It is it's very impressive in terms of sort of the pomp and circumstance. Like we don't cut any corners. It's really very well done in terms of opening ceremonies, the events themselves. We hold ourselves to the highest standards. So for each one of the 23, I think, Olympic style sports the Special Olympics offers within the state of New York, we abide by those governing bodies. And ensure that we're enforcing those rules. Everything is minimally adapted for the reason that we know what our athletes can do, and we don't want people perceiving our athletes as less than, right? And I can tell you right now, the sport of powerlifting, there are athletes that can lift 10 times what I lift, and I've been in the gym, since I was 14 years old. So we have some very, very impressive athletes. But again, just like the organization, there's misconceptions and misunderstandings. And we're finally getting to a point where, because of the programming that exists within the school systems, and because your mainstream students are really surrounded by individuals with disabilities who have abilities, who are demonstrating their abilities on a daily basis, it's kind of starting to shift the way people view individuals with disabilities. So we're getting there. It's a slow process. I know, we got a ways to go, undoubtedly, but the fact, just going back to when I was high school, the late 90s, I was a jock. I guess I was one of the cool kids, but I never would have made fun of an individual with disability. But I also, looking back on it, I didn't go out of my way to have those interactions. And there weren't a lot of opportunities, maybe at lunch, every once in a while. But for the most part, back in the 90s, you had a whole wing of the school that was designated for individuals with disabilities. So those opportunities really didn't exist. And now it's completely shifted. I mean, it warms my heart. Like, it really does. I mean, part of what I do because I have kids and I want them growing up in a world that demonstrates, access for everybody and acceptance and inclusion, all of that. And we're getting there. Like, I'm watching my son, who's at a school district about a mile down the road from where I work, who this school district offers a ton of programming at the middle school, at the high school. And we just started some programming at the elementary schools too. And, to watch my son go through each of the levels and be surrounded by Special Olympics programming, and to again sort of talk about it and demonstrate understanding, of some of these more, I guess, advanced concepts, or at least concepts that weren't always talked about or aren't always talked about, is an amazing thing. And then I think about, when his kids are in school, like, well, how much better that's going to be, just because in the last 25 years, we've just grown exponentially, and we've really come a long way. So I think the future's bright in that regard. But just to pop back to what I was talking about earlier and finish that thought on the athlete's sort of life cycle through Special Olympics. After the state competitions, I mentioned the national competitions and international competitions. Imagine for a second, you're an athlete, a Special Olympics athlete, and you have a chance to go to, Turin, Italy to compete, and you're there for, 3 weeks, and you're able to enjoy the food and the people, and the geography, the surroundings, like all of that, while competing at the highest level. That's an amazing thing. Not to say that everybody, gets to do that, and that's good. I think, the competitive nature of what we do, especially at the higher levels. I think that's part of sport. But again, we're creating opportunities that wouldn't otherwise exist. And I watch our athletes, and I've seen the difference that it's made in each of their lives. I've seen it in my daughter's life, who honestly, I think sport probably saved her life, to be quite honest with you. She's kind of my why I do this. And so, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of really great things going on. So I covered a lot there in terms of some of the programming that we offered. I know we're talking specifically about some of the younger programming, the young athletes and the junior athlete stuff. But I wanted to provide kind of an overview of what we do. And that's really, we're just, we're scraping the surface there, because there's plenty more that goes along with some of the stuff that I highlighted.
Well, I mean, it's all super excited, Ryan. I mean, it's that whole spirit of inclusion and belonging and being part of something. And you again, you think about the 80s and 90s. How many kids didn't get an opportunity like this? How many kids were purposely excluded? And what does that do to your self-esteem and to your development and to your social circle and everything else? So really seeing something that you've purposefully designed to be as inclusive as possible. And then it's phenomenal, the path that you just described. I mean, this is literally something you could start at a young age. And as you mentioned, next thing you know, you're in, a teenager or beyond in Italy eating some good pizza or whatever. I mean, the opportunities here are super amazing. I mean, I hope you're really proud for the work you do. It sounds like an amazing organization. And I can only imagine some of the impact you see on kids who, quite frankly, before you get involved, maybe they don't have an opportunity like this, or certainly not as many opportunities as you're able to provide.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, that is the feel good part of the job for sure. Because we're able to see the fruits of our labor pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Setting up a young athletes program, we've done that in weeks, and honestly, you could do it in days. We Before the show, you and I got a chance to talk a little bit about one of the Head Start programs that we developed locally in upstate New York. And, they definitely were very diligent about the onboarding process, ensuring that everybody went through the necessary training, that they identified what adapted pieces of equipment they would need in order to implement programs to the best of their ability. They wanted to talk about what it would look like on a day-to-day. They were actually doing a program that was somewhat similar in nature, but they were paying out of pocket for it. And so again, for us to be able to come in and provide, equipment and the training, ongoing professional development, because we say partnership, but I really want to stress that it is a partnership. It means that when something comes up and you don't understand it, you can reach out to your local state chapter and ask them, your questions, because you got multiple points of contact. It means that, every year on an annual basis, you may be having those staff members from Special Olympics back on site on campus to provide more professional development, maybe talking specifically about, another one of our programs that some of these students would be graduating to, or perhaps on the other end of the spectrum, you've realized you got a couple students that would benefit from specific pieces of adapted equipment, beeper balls or what have you. Or, they need to sample one of our other resources like Inclusive Adaptations, which is built exclusively for individuals with profound disabilities. So we've got something for everyone, but the partnership component of it, it takes time for it to evolve and grow. And we get to a really good place pretty quickly, but we need to start to understand, what are the needs of that school, the individual school, the district itself, and the individuals that, the individual students as well, and the teachers. How do we support them? So it's a process, but again, it's not an overwhelming process. And if anything, it's something that every school or every organization, Head Start included, should consider. And if they don't think it's for them, that's perfectly fine. We want partners that, are invested. But having been in education and having been an administrator, I know there's not many people in this field that are there for the money or there
Right.
for really any other reason than, they want their kids to have the best, and they're there to make a difference. And so we can help with that through this partnership. So for me, I think it's a no-brainer. I think back to when I was teaching. So my background is in physical education and then athletic administration, but I don't have a degree in adapted physical education. And I don't know how many people know this, but there's a stark contrast between adapted phys ed and physical education. Essentially, understanding that you need to adapt these activities so that it's accessible to all or many. And so, how are you going to do that? And when I was doing my undergraduate in physical education, the amount of time that you would spend in those activity classes meaning specific sports and how to teach those specific sports, the time that you spent on the adapted portion of it was minimal. I mean, I would say probably 5% of the time, if that. And so you're not learning about person first language. You're not learning about how to adapt these activities. You're not learning about assessment specific to individuals with disabilities. And that's a shame, because if you look at special education, as a parallel, it's very different, right? The standards and requirements associated with special education are pretty stringent compared to what we're talking about with adapted physical education. And additionally, those teachers are special education teachers. I don't know a percentage, but I would say an overwhelming majority of the physical education teachers that are teaching adapted physical education are not adapted physical education teachers. And I know that because those are the individuals that we partner with. So when we get a call and it's, we got so-and-so, they're fresh out of college, of course they get plugged into the most, difficult class,
assignment
right?
they can, right?
Behavioral class, whatever. And they're struggling. Well, yeah, of course, right? They're year one, you put them in a very difficult environment to begin with. And to be quite honest with you, a 10-year veteran probably would struggle in that setting if they didn't have the formal training in terms of how to manage that class. And so we're able to come in, provide some professional development specific to those adapted classes, and then again, provide the equipment, the ongoing support, the curriculum, the resources. I mean, the resource itself is specific to young athletes and junior athletes is phenomenal. I mean, it is easy enough to digest so that if it's a community-based program and it's, Johnny's dad who sells insurance by day, and he's implementing the program, he can look at that resource and say, okay, this is exactly what I need. Here's my space, here's the equipment, here's the cues. I mean, it tells you literally what you're
Wow.
going to say. So for a phys ed teacher, even whenever I'm doing the trainings, I always say to them, listen, this is probably my favorite partnership because I was you and I would have benefited
Right.
immensely from having support like this. Um, but additionally, we're at a juncture here where, we need to provide these students additional support. And if they're getting behind from, right off the rip, that's going to follow them throughout. So the importance of being able to step in and help those teachers who can then help those students, it just makes so much sense. And so that's why we really encourage everybody to at least consider the partnership and to learn more about what a partnership would look like, which in all honesty, it could be a 20-minute conversation. It could be a 10-minute conversation. And it's one of the reasons why I appreciate you, Andy, having me on here, because again, these are things that they exist, but just not enough people know about them. So this is how it all grows and this is how it all happens. And that's just the word of mouth.
Well, and the continuing support is super important, and it's a big differentiator, right? Because how many trainings do you like? You go to a training, you go to a 90-minute session, and that's it. Like you
Right.
don't get anything
Right.
further. And I know there's a tremendous amount of people that want to do the right thing. Everybody, I think, wants to be inclusive, but as I'm sure you see in your just in your day-to-day job, like it's hard. People don't know what to do. They don't know what to purchase. Some of this stuff costs a lot of money and you only get one chance to get it right. And if you blow it, you're in trouble with the kids. You're in trouble with your principal or your manager, your
Um,
director.
you're right.
Heaven
You're
forbid you
right.
say the wrong thing and offend somebody. I mean, there's like a million reasons to like not do something, which is probably the initial hurdle of I want to do something, but I don't know how to start. And I think that's an awesome resource that you have where you can get connected with a network of folks that literally live and breathe it and have done it and can help you and kind of steer you in the right direction. What a great community you've got there. That's amazing.
It is. And I think that's part of the reason you're right, why we would encourage schools or otherwise, families too. I mean, so, I have three children, as I mentioned. I do have my middle child has an IEP. And again, had some difficulties, really born out of COVID, that time period where everything shut down and sports stopped. And that was her environment and her community. And that all went away. And then, I guess that's just when, idle time, it results sometimes in some really negative things. But here's the good thing is that quality, credible programming provides much more than just the sport. It provides opportunities for those parents to have interactions as well. And I will never forget for my first young athletes program that I went to observe. I It was amazing what was happening in terms of these different stations and these kids demonstrating some of the skills they were working on. But the parents, this is the big part. The parents were on the sidelines. Well, actually, that's not true. Not all of them were. They were doing one of three things. Some of them were on the sidelines talking to other parents, which you don't think much of, but I overheard one of those conversations. What they were talking about was these other programs that they had found. Because just like Special Olympics, these other programs that would benefit a parent of a child with a disability, they do exist, but they don't have all those dollars for marketing. And so the parents talking and telling, oh, yeah, Tommy found this and he really enjoyed this. And so I wonder if Johnny would want to do it. Oh, they can ride over together. So those social interactions, again, just there's not as many opportunities. The other thing that they're doing is they're interacting. So they're actually out there and they're throwing the ball with their child, which, at home in a less structured setting or not having access to the same adapted equipment, that it might not be as beneficial or enjoyable for either one of them. But now it is, And then the third piece was they had siblings and the siblings were having those same interactions. And what a shame, right? Because a lot of times families with children with disabilities, they may have a neurotypical child as well. And those interactions are strained and stressed. And again, going back to my own personal situation, I think about my middle child and the interactions she had with her siblings during that, 3, 4 year period where she struggled. It was really difficult. So my point being, I know how difficult it is with neurotypical children, the responsibility and the workload that is put on parents of children with disabilities is substantial. And so if we can be there to help those parents and steer them in the right direction, what a difference that makes, right? So, they're at their child's first checkup, and then there's a packet there for Special Olympics that tells them about young athletes, about some of the health services that we offer. Just, I'm not going to go into the health side because I honestly don't understand it well enough, but just so your audience understands, the type of impact that can have at state games. There's various disciplines, fit feet, opening eyes, that sort of thing, right? So let's take opening eyes, for instance. They have optometrists there, and then students as well, optometry students who are helping those doctors, and they're actually giving eye exams. And so you have athletes that are walking away with glasses that cost, $250, and they haven't paid a penny for them. And also, by the way, now they're able to see, and they
Yeah,
actually
side
have the
benefit, right?
right. Yeah, right. So, that's part of what we do, but there's so much more, which again, that's why I would encourage them, have the conversation with your local Special Olympics rep. Just see what's out there. If, it doesn't cost you anything, it costs you maybe 10 minutes of your time to have that conversation, or go on Special Olympics New York website. We talk about a lot of the different programs that we offer there. So, again, we're moving in the right direction. It's a slow grow, just the sheer fact that, you're not gonna see a Super Bowl ad, or, a lot of, a lot of commercials, but regardless, it's credible programming, it's free programming, and it would benefit a lot of the school districts out there, a lot of people out there just across the state of New York and beyond.
Oh, I mean, 100%. And I was funny. I was researching, just kind of the history. Like, what is this whole program? When did it come about? What's the intersection with early child care and all this stuff? And oh my gosh, it goes back almost 62 years, all the way to LBJ and
Yeah,
Shriver. And,
yeah,
we had, obviously the architect of Head Start at the table and the chairman of
yep.
the Special Olympics at the table. And it's probably one of the more compelling stories in early childhood that nobody remembers or nobody knows anymore. And I think it's kind of
You're right.
fascinating, all the longevity that's happened here, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, the history of it it's really interesting. I mean, just again, my short window of time, what I've experienced, I can't imagine going back to those early years. Eunice Kennedy Shriver and her sister Rosemary, who had an intellectual disability. Unfortunately, they just didn't understand at that time. Most of the time happened was those children would go off to a facility, an institution, and those institutions were not great. They were some really horrible living situations. The Kennedys, obviously a family with a lot of influence and money, and they knew that they could take care of Rosemary, better than an institution would. But so they took her in, and Eunice saw all of this happening, and Rosemary was, the lifeguard at their family picnics, and did a lot of really amazing things. Fortunately, at that thought, that was, how you would quote unquote cure an intellectual disability, which we obviously know is not the case. But Eunice Kennedy Shriver's experience, that's what shaped her and her beliefs. And to your point, Sergeant Shriver and his understanding of individuals with disabilities, and some of the programs that he was charged with creating under Lyndon B. Johnson. Like there were some amazing people involved in the birth of this organization, the state chapter as well. I'm really proud to work here. It is a great organization. I'm so happy to have seen over the last 12 years its growth and the recognition that we get, not in terms of like kudos, but rather recognition as in, people that understand what it is that we do and how we do it. And then to see it now embedded within the schools, that's phenomenal. And to have been here from when it essentially was piloted to where we are now, and then to think about over the next 10 years how we'll grow that within the schools and otherwise the community as well. It's an amazing thing. So yeah, the history is there. I think it's important to recognize it because, that's how all of this started. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to go in the right direction, and we're evolving and staying current, which we do. I think the continued development of resources, the partnerships with organizations like Nike, like all of that stuff provides us the opportunity to not only keep doing what we're doing, but doing more. The way I envision it is we do have a quote unquote library of resources, but I envision like a true library of resources,
Yeah.
where we can, pick from, one of 50 or 100 different programs that could potentially have positive impact. Because I don't believe that there's a one size fits all. I think it really needs to be tailored to the needs. And educators know how to do that. That's what they do on a daily basis. So if they can do that in conjunction with Special Olympics, essentially we're consulting, right? And we're working with them to allow them to put their best foot forward so they can have that positive impact on the kiddos. So yeah, no, I'm glad you brought up the history. That is an interesting piece. And then the partnership with Head Start, one of the programs that I oversee young athletes. So very gross motor skill based, designed for, again, students pre-K to second, again, ish, and that 2 to 7 age range. But young athletes essentially checks, 9 out of 10 boxes that a lot of these Head Start programs need to check. And so if
Yeah.
they're partnering with us, what we know is that now they're doing many of the things that they need to do to continue to receive some of the funding that they receive. Plus, obviously the benefit that it has on their students. To your point, 10% at a minimum of their population is going to be individuals with disabilities. And so that's inclusive by nature. So that's a home run. I mean, I don't know that there's another organization that makes more sense than Head Start in terms of partnerships with Special Olympics. And we've got literature that outlines all of that in terms of the alignment between the standards and then the programming that we offer. I'll also say that since that was written, we've added additional programming like junior athletes, which I'm really proud of. That upper elementary piece. I had an opportunity to write that curriculum in conjunction with a
Wow.
local adaptive physical education teacher who's been implementing Special Olympics programming at various levels for many, many years. It also felt really great because as an ex-phys ed teacher, I don't know if other PE teachers do this. I think they do, but as I would adapt things and come up with new games and interesting ideas in terms of implementation, I would always say to myself, at some point, I'm going to write a book. Well, I'm
There's your
probably never
book.
going
You
to write a
wrote it.
book. It's, I'm sure it's on my list. I'm sure maybe when I get to retirement, although I won't be able to remember any of the stuff that I did at that point. But the cool thing was that with the junior athletes curriculum, it did give us a chance to do that, for me to take some of the games that I had created over the years, and embed them within the curriculum. And the neat thing is, with young athletes, it's, every lesson plan is a warm up, a skill, an activity to reinforce that skill, and then this cool down or debriefing period. Which I will say the cool down debriefing period is so important. It's a great opportunity to take, these little nuggets and provide them to your students. So, if you can imagine your students doing a bunch of different activities, ending with this big game, having a great time, and really, they come down to the circle and they're sweating and their heart's pumping, but they're also ready to learn, right? Because they're feeling good. The endorphins are rushing, like they're feeling on top of the world. Well, you might have 30 seconds or a minute, probably not much longer with this age group, but you might have a little period of time there where you can start to talk about something associated with what you just did and tie it to health and fitness, right? So if they were running around, presumably their heart's beating really fast. It could be a thing where you just say, okay, everyone take 2 fingers here, your middle finger and your index finger, and you're going to place it right underneath your jaw. This is called your carotid artery, and you can feel your heart. Oh, wow, that's so cool. So just these little pieces in that cool down debriefing period really enhances the lesson plan itself. But to go back to young athletes, so you've got as you mentioned, you had 8 units, which are all built on progressions, foundational skills, unit 1, and then advanced sports skills is what you're doing by unit 8, and then everything in between in terms of the various gross motor skills, throwing, jumping, all that. And then you've got 3 lessons per unit. So you get a total of 24. Now, that's just one of the resources. We have another cross-curricular resource, which is absolutely amazing. It's a 108 lesson plan, 108 lessons, but it includes resources specific to the classroom activities that really coincide with what they're doing within the gym. So again, I'll just paint a quick picture here. If you were doing, there's a book, I think it's redfish, bluefish, maybe. I can't remember oh,
That
rainbow
sounds
fish.
about right. Yeah.
I know. Well, you should know. You've got kids
Yeah.
that
Well,
age.
I think it's a red fish, one fish, two fish or something.
One
I think
fish,
I've read
two
that
fish.
book.
Yeah. Well, I think this one is rainbow fish. I always get it wrong, but usually I'm talking to a teacher and they get it right off the rip. So rainbow fish. It talks about these fish, a school of fish, and they all have the same color scales, except for this one fish which has different scales. And it talks about how at first that fish was embarrassed and pulled away, but then eventually one of the other fish came over and said, come in. And so it talks about inclusion, right, and diversity. And so imagine that in the gym, you're playing a game of sharks and minnows, right? Because that would lend itself pretty well to this theme. And so they're playing a game of sharks and minnows, but they talk a little bit about the story, right? But they just touch on it. And then when they go back to the classroom, they will read Rainbow Fish. Now, Rainbow Fish is part of a program that we offer called Unified Young Readers. So young athletes and Unified Young Readers kind of came together there to offer a more comprehensive lesson that was introduced in physical education but reinforced within the classroom. And I'm just giving you a little example. There's many more examples like that within that 108 lesson resource. And again, it's not just phys ed, right? But it's English and math and all of the other stuff, and so kind of all balled up. A little more of a undertaking, right? And so we
Yeah.
probably
Right.
would suggest that to a first year school. We likely would start off with young athletes if that was appropriate, and just have them use that curriculum kind of as it is, meaning, unit one, day one, unit one, day two, and follow that verbatim. But eventually they're going to get to a point where they may be dissecting that resource, and that's okay. We encourage that. Educators, administrators, again, do that on a daily basis. So, hey, take a look at our resource, take a look at your curriculum and then the standards, right? And so you're trying to sort of extract and derive the good out of all of this and roll it up into something that again fits the needs of your specific students. And to go back to standards, our programs, young athletes, junior athletes, align with Shape America's national teaching and learning standards. Junior athletes also referenced New York State's teaching physical education teaching and learning standards. So you're doing the right thing. You're satisfying that in terms of implementing the resource itself. So and sorry, so I'm jumping all over the place, but to finish my thought on junior athletes, so felt really good to get those activities down on paper. It's more game based. So that's the big difference between young athletes and junior athletes. So young athletes, introduction to some of the skills. And then junior athletes were taking games that they know that are associated with various Special Olympic sports. And then we're taking the skills and we're embedding them into those activities, right? And
Okay.
so I've been, they're going to have fun playing the game. Why not, play purposeful games that are going to help them develop those skills and appreciate those sports. And the great thing there, Andy, is that if they have a taking to any of those sports are all offered within Special Olympics, meaning they can learn about it in junior athletes, then they go into unified physical education at the middle school, eventually the high school level. But eventually they'll be out in the community and they can have an opportunity to engage in community-based basketball programming or softball or whatever else, or those skills that they learned going all the way back to, first, second, third, fourth grade.
Wow.
So some exciting stuff.
Oh, I mean, it's super exciting. And I mean, it's like, I know people are sitting at home going, wow, this sounds all great. And I'd love to do it, but I got enough going on. I don't need one more thing added. What's this? What's the time commitment? How much burden is this going to put on me? Blah, 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 blah. What do you say to those folks? It sounds like you got a pretty
Yep.
well-oiled machine. And I don't know, I know you're talking from New York. Is this pretty typical for what we would see in Illinois, Idaho, Nebraska,
Yep.
other places throughout
Yep.
the country? Okay.
Yeah, no, great question. So two pieces there. So one would be, much of what we do in New York is what everybody else does. So Special Olympics International, Special Olympics North America, they kind of create the framework and the resources that we reference, and they provide us the support that we need in terms of implementing statewide. And so it's going to look very, very similar from state to state, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the workload, I get it. So, one,
Yeah, I'm sure as a
I
former
was,
teacher, you get the
yeah,
administrator, you get the
100%.
workload. It hasn't
It,
gotten any better, Ryan. I don't know what's going on.
no, probably not. Probably worse, I'm sure. Yeah, I want everyone to understand that the last thing that we want to do is put something else on your plate. Like the point of this is to make it more efficient, to streamline things so that you're able to do more within those classes, and within the school year as a whole. Additionally, if those students are able to take in that information and those skills and then retain that and then move to the next level, hopefully that's kind of raising the bar of the entire
Yeah.
class, and they're able to transition more quickly and more efficiently as well, just in that they're receiving the appropriate support. And then in terms of the onboarding and everything, so again, it could be a matter of days. It's the professional development piece. So getting that scheduled, which honestly, we do it just like this sometimes, where, somebody's in Western New York and I'm in Albany, it's a 4.5 hour ride. But they're under the gun. They really want to start things. So the first step would be a conversation like this, which is just, it's not a training. It's just a conversation. Could be on the phone, could be on Zoom or however else you want to do it. But now we're talking about what it is that what it is that you need or think you want, and then me talking a little bit more about in depth about those programs and what the partnership would look like. And then if moving forward from there, we would schedule a PD, which would be roughly an hour. And that PD would be specific to the programs that you would be implementing. So if you said, hey, listen, we're just going to start out with young athletes, this other stuff really interests me, but I want to get 1 year of successful implementation under my belt, and I want to get a sampling of what it is that you offer. And I'm just going to follow the resource as is. Well, that's a slam dunk. That's easy enough, right? And so you're talking for an hour about, hey, here's the curriculum. Here's this inclusive adaptations that you can use to make adaptations to the resource itself. Typically speaking, these are the pieces of equipment that would be necessary to implement a program. We might send them a list of that equipment, say, hey, for a phys ed teacher, can you just check to see what do you have, what might you need? And then we would work with the regional teams in order to support them financially as best we can. And then if they wanted to celebrate those kiddos, that's something that we would talk about probably closer to, the second half of the year, recognizing those individual students, which, for me is a very important piece of it. We talked about all of the positives of individuals with disability participating in organized physical activity like this. But part of that is the recognition, because you want them to feel good about what they did and you want them to want to come back. And parents don't always have the opportunity to recognize their kids in the same way that a neurotypical parent might, right? Meaning, in students with disabilities don't get those same chances as we talked about before. Well, standing up in front of somebody and getting a trophy or a medal or whatever else, that's part of that experience, right?
Right.
And it's an important part. Just like I said about riding the bus out to Buffalo or whatever. It doesn't sound like that's not sport, but it is. It is part of
Right.
sport, right? It's part of that comprehensive experience, and that's what we're trying to provide. So the recognition piece, a lot of schools would do it internally where maybe they have older students at the high school participating in unified sports, and they come down and they manage the stations that the young athletes are just rotating through, and the parents are watching and cheering them on. And then at the end of all of that, law enforcement's there, and they have young athlete ribbons, and they put a ribbon over their head, and they have these Special Olympics put me in coach shirts, and they're feeling good. And it's just a beautiful experience. It's one of those sort of tear jerking, why am I here moments. And it's as much for the athlete, so for our language, athlete, individual with intellectual disability, as it is for the partner, so your mainstream or neurotypical individual, as it is for the parent, because again, as a parent of three very active athletic children, my favorite thing to do is go to practices and tournaments and games and whatever else. Well, they don't get that same opportunity. And I mean, that pulls at my heartstrings too, because I mean that, like, I am a sport junkie undoubtedly. But tonight my son and I won't get back from soccer practice until probably 9:30, and I can't wait. Like, I cannot wait to sit there for an hour and watch him and his team. He's finally getting to the level where it's like, you're like, wow, it's pretty impressive. I certainly couldn't do that, So it's a lot of fun to watch. But even when they're little, right? I mean, it's just the fact that
Right.
those kids are out there being active and you know how they're feeling on the inside. So as a parent, that means the world. So,
Right.
um,
Well, and the
it's
and the pride and the accomplishment and the sense of wow, I actually did this, and and thanks to you and all of your colleagues' works, like now that can be something that all the children can experience, because I can't imagine being left out of that. That's just heartbreaking. So
it is.
the great
It
work
is.
that you're doing to make sure everybody can participate and be an equal player in this is just phenomenal. And honestly, I see no downside. I hope people start reaching out, and I hope your
Yeah.
inbox starts getting loaded. If folks do want to get involved, if they want to learn more, if they want to pick your brain a bit, what's the best way to get in touch with you guys?
Sure. Yeah. So, within the state of New York, you check out the Special Olympics New York website. And then for me specifically, if you were interested in young athletes programming or junior athletes programming, in anywhere across the state of New York, it's R Miller at nyso.org. And I also, if you're from outside of New York, feel free to shoot me a message. I'd be happy to connect you to either our Special Olympics North America young athletes or really early education team, or even one of the state chapters, depending on where you're located. So happy to make those connections. Yes, Andy, I would encourage anybody to reach out, even if you're not sure. It's worth a 5 minute conversation. It really is. There's really no downside to it, and you don't know what you don't know. Hopefully, this provided you with a little bit better of an understanding of what we do and what we offer. But happy to have that conversation.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And one of the things that we didn't chat too much about, but that whole bringing the parents together, and you have a whole special program called the Family Forum, which talks about, gosh, how do you advocate for your child's rights? How do you navigate diagnosis? How do you access services? How do you promote independence? Really a community, which, as you mentioned, I mean, one of the cool things about going to these events is now as a father is I get to meet some other dads. I get to meet some other moms. I get to meet some other adults. And, it's funny. My in-laws have always said, like, there's going to be a time when you're not known as Andy, you're just known as, Rachel's dad or Evelyn's dad or whatever. And
That is
I'm like,
true.
what are you talking about? You're not, and here it is, right? So now
Yeah.
people, oh, that's not Andy. That's someone's dad now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
but
Yeah.
that network is just so powerful, especially when you're going through something. And if you can connect with other families that have been through it, to have that kind of sense of community and that sense of, oh, I get what you're going through. Such a powerful community that you've created there. And I know a lot of our early childhood programs and of course our Head Starts, they're always looking at different ways to try to get families and fathers engaged and all that kind of great stuff. So this might be, again, just a real natural collaboration of stuff that you're already doing, resources that you have, a really nice curriculum that's been fleshed out and time tested that you could easily plug right into, quite frankly, right? So I just nothing but upside. We're going to have our big conference, right? Head Start East is going to be in Turning Stone up in by Syracuse, New York, in September. We're going to try like heck to get Ryan to come. I think he's almost committed, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. I hope to be there. It would be a great opportunity to connect with some of your audience, and yeah, it could be a very impactful event. So I appreciate the invitation, Andy.
and then if he does well, maybe we'll get to see him in Puerto Rico in April. We'll keep our fingers crossed from that. That would be fun. But
Sounds like a plan.
certainly great, man. So like rapid fire before we let you go. What's your favorite sports team? Who are you rooting for?
I'm a New York Mets fan, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I'm a Cubs fan, so I share your pain, my friend. I share your pain.
Well, yeah. So you got, I mean, yeah, they've been interesting this year because they were hot, they were white hot, and then they obviously went into a bit of a slump. The Mets, however, just have slumped all year after getting rid of some of their big name stars, and it is what it is. I don't know this year. I'm still listening to every game, on my phone, and we're going to a game on Sunday. Actually,
Oh,
we're bringing
nice.
the family every year. Yeah, it's a Father's Day tradition, so we'll go and we'll cheer them on, and hopefully they turn things around. I think they got the talent, but it's been a tough one. Not
How
gonna lie.
about winter sports, hockey or skiing? Which one are you picking?
I'm a big skier, same
Okay.
family. We go every year to a different location. We did Mount Tremblant last year, which was
Ooh, nice.
amazing up in Canada. And I'm trying to talk my wife into doing a West Coast, Colorado, Vail, something like that. But it's not cheap, so we'll
Well,
see.
and I got to be honest, I didn't learn to ski. I played hockey growing up, so I lived in Illinois. We didn't have any mountains or anything like
Right,
that, so I didn't
right.
learn to ski till I was in my 40s. My wife, on the other hand, grew up in New Jersey and she can ski like no other. And I don't know how you all do it up there with the rocks and the ice and everything else you all have, but you are making the real skiers up in your neck of the woods. So you would absolutely have, it'd probably be boring for you out at a Vale Beaver Creek or something,
I
to be
don't
honest.
know. I'm sure I'd find something for me.
I have found the older I get, the more it hurts when I fall. Like it takes a little bit
Oh,
more time to recover.
yes, that is, and I'm very worried, I guess, about my knees and my back and everything else. Every year I get older, I'm like, I don't know if I should be feeling this, but it is a good sport, a lifetime sport, so it's enjoyable for sure.
Absolutely. How about music? What's on your playlist?
Ooh, that's a good question. So wow. All right. I have been listening to a lot of Lumineers recently.
Okay.
I'm more of like a classic rock kind of guy. But my kids, I guess, they have had an influence on me. So I kind of listen to everything, but my main genre would be that 70s hair band rock. That would
There
be
you go.
my typical listening experience.
I mean, the good thing is you can catch several of those at a pretty reasonable place. They're out touring for it, not too expensive anymore, right? So,
I know, no, I know. Actually, the Black Pros were at Turning Stone last year, right around the time that
oh,
the
nice.
conference was taking place. I was trying to talk my brother into going out there, but yeah, you're right. But as I get older, the other thing is that these guys keep passing away. I said to my wife, I was like, we gotta, we should make a short list of like bands that we want to see before it's too late. But I got to see. So my favorite band of all time, and this, I guess makes me seem even older than I am, but is the Beatles.
Nice.
But we got to see Paul McCartney, boy, probably 10 or 15 years ago, and it was
Okay.
amazing. So that was a bucket list thing. So that was great. But yeah, with kids, you're listening to, I guess, whatever they want to in the
Yeah,
car.
the K-pop Demon Hunter or whatever that
Yeah,
is, or
right. You
I,
know that better than I do.
or Elsa, Let It
Yeah,
Snow,
yeah,
or
I
Let It
remember
Go,
that.
or
Yeah.
all that good stuff, right? But we did get to see the Who not too long ago, and boy, the Who's getting a little bit old. I'm gonna
Getting
say it's
older. I
not a good
saw them a
show, but
while back.
wow, you know.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? Something to be said for actually being able to see them and again, check that box. I saw them, yeah, probably 20 years ago, but yeah, they're all getting older, Andy. I guess we are too.
I feel their pain for sure. Well, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed the conversation. If someone's listening right now and saying like, "Hey, I've got a couple kids in my class. I've been really trying hard to get them involved in sports and get them, involved, do something at their level. I just don't know what to do." Do you have any kind of just off the cuff advice? What's one easy thing that you could do to help make people feel included? Obviously, reach out to Special Olympics, but in the
Yeah,
interim, is
yeah.
there anything that you would recommend from your PE days and all the work you've been doing?
Yeah, I would say, we have a lot of programs that are based on various premises, but the main thing is the inclusion component of it. But I would also caution that it's not inclusion for inclusion's sake, meaning some of the programs that we offer are within self-contained classrooms, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You We're all trying to do the best that we can do. So even, if you familiarize yourself with any of the programs that we offer, and I just mean just, reading 10 minutes, any of those resources, you'd get a lot of ideas in terms of what you can do within your classroom. So listen, we want everyone to be partners with Special Olympics, but if you're not, that's okay. Like go access some of the resources, read, some of that, review it and understand it, and then utilize some of it. It's all about providing opportunities for those kiddos. It's all about allowing them to continue to progress so they can feel better about themselves. So whether or not that's a partnership with us, like again, we'd rather it be in partnership with us, but inclusion is a positive thing. It's not something that has to be done in every instance, but educating yourself and lifelong learners. Like I think educators for the most part and administrators, they are lifelong learners just by nature. So I would encourage that. Continue to stay abreast of current trends and topics. I try to do my best doing the same. I enjoy learning, especially when you know that it's going to be used for good in the way that we do. So
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Well, super. Well, I can't say thank you enough for all the work that you and your colleagues are doing. Thank you for every single thing. I can just imagine it must be so rewarding to see the difference that you're making and allowing everyone to be fully engaged and participate and be included. It's really cool. I think you found your calling, my friend. You're so happy. I can tell it just resonates right through the screen at me. So I
Yeah,
thank you
no,
for what
I
you're doing,
I
man.
100%. Yes. No, between, family life and my 9 to 5 and yeah, I'm blessed for sure. No doubt. But I appreciate the time, Andy. I do.
Oh, me too. Thank
I'm
you.
really thankful because we don't always get these opportunities, and this is what it's all about for us at this organization is, making sure that we can teach others about some of this good stuff that we're doing and how we can partner with them. So I appreciate that.
Amazing. And we'll put all the links, everything in the show notes for folks so they can, check you out, follow you, find your website, email you if they need more information, all that good stuff. And I hope we get to see you in September at the Head Start East Live in Syracuse event, September 24th. And really just say thank you, right? Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy the podcast. We continue to try to bring you new and interesting guests like Ryan here. Certainly, I had no idea Special Olympics was doing all this wonderful stuff. So I really appreciate, this podcast is a platform to get out the information and to share with you. And certainly we wouldn't be here without all of our listeners. So thank you so much for joining us. This is Andy saying I'll see you again soon on the next episode of Early Childhood Chats.